Oh, and Leandro, can you say something?
Hello. Can you please share your screen with me on Skype?
Oh, yes. So, hello everybody. I think we are live. We didn't do an intro scene or nothing like that. The sound is horrible because my interface is on loan to the studio, and I thought I had a second Scarlett that I thought I could use in the meantime, but Gob had other plans. They were like, nope, this doesn't work anymore. And I did so much troubleshooting, and it's so sad to Google something like Scarlett 2i2 no sound, because you gotta go through like half an hour of people being like, well, have you checked that it's set in your but it's not any of that. I even got deep, and it was like, oh, make sure to delete the .kext files that it may have created, and I found the thing that was like class compliance check, and I ran that. None of that worked. I also don't get input. I also tested it on another computer and just didn't work, so I think that Scarlett is just done. It was the first version of Scarlett, so it's probably 10 years old. Hello, Nod was one. Good to have you. Let us know if there's like sync issues and things of that nature. And yeah, and otherwise, after all that stuff that I said, how are you, Leandro?
I am doing well. Thanks for asking. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to doing whatever we are doing today.
Yeah, so we're doing a pitch shifting thing, which I think we more or less finished. We have a functional pitch shifting thing. It could be a good way to test also that the stream is hearing this.
Well, I am not.
Oh, you're not hearing that, so now sound little loud, little distortion. Yep, that's just, yeah. It's just gonna happen today because I'm using my webcam audio, so yeah, can't do nothing about that, but I'll just turn myself down a little bit, and then when Leandro talks it'll be louder. There's just, I can't do anything about it. It's, it's a webcam computer. So Leandro doesn't hear that, and that's a problem. So how do we make Leandro hear that? We will say, since Leandro is receiving black hole 3, we'll send to black hole 3 on my computer. I should also not be doing a render in the middle of all this. That's probably too much to ask my computer.
Okay, lots of stuff happening. What was the original sound without effects?
Oh.
Wow, that's very different.
It is indeed. And how come? Hold on, I should have been doing all of this before, but hey man, are y'all used to our channel yet? I think you're hearing it double now. Or the stream is hearing it double now. Fuck. How did I fix this just last week? Sending to black hole 1. Okay, got it. Alright. Fuck this.
Oh man, streaming is like thinking on your feet because you have to like solve a jigsaw puzzle in front of an audience.
Yes.
That's what you're doing now.
Yes. Is everybody having just so much fun? Is this the best day of your life? Okay, so now, oh, that won't work. Leandro's getting me from black hole 3. Leandro needs to get the audio on black hole 3, but I need to not. Motherfucker. Alright, I got it. Instead of sending to black hole 3, I'll just send to black hole 1.
And ladies and gentlemen, this is the What is the official title? The stream administrator, the professional in charge of sound for a professional stream.
Now the stream no longer needs black hole 1, so we'll just get rid of it. And now you hear me, yes?
I do.
And you hear this.
I do not.
Motherfucker. Oh, now you will hear it in 3, 2, 1. Okay, you still hear me.
I do.
And now you hear this.
I do.
Alright. Rock and roll.
Okay, that's a lot different. Oh, but the effect is bypassed.
Yes,
okay.
And if I...
But yeah, I hear that.
It's being modulated by a random modulator. So if we actually put this...
Ah, okay, so that's what it is. I was like, oh my god, this pitch shifter is all over the place. It is. It literally is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alright, so that's what that does. Let's for the moment not go nutty, and let's just get rid of this. Alright, okay, so how are you, Leandro? Oh, we already said that.
How are you, Arya?
You know, I've had better days. Yeah, it's a whole thing. Have you ever heard of the Atom Production Studio 4K?
I know of it.
Yeah.
But I never got into it, really. Why do you say that?
We've been using it in the studio, and I think it's a bit of a piece of crap. I wanna know. I mean, it's good, but first of all, I want to make a video called "The Worst User Manual in the History of Anything Ever," and this definitely qualifies. First of all, the user manual is for like 4 devices. And the whole point of the manual is to make you feel like, oh, if you bought the cheaper one, you're an idiot and you should buy the more expensive one. So they just don't tell you what the cheap one does. They just go, cheap one connected and shit. And then they're like, oh, but if you had this expensive version, you could do this. And I'm like, but tell me what the buttons on the thing does.
And I understand that you have the cheaper one.
We got the cheaper one, yeah, and we're just using it as a switcher, but honestly, I'm like, somebody pushed us to use it, but I'm like, before using that, everything was a lot simpler. So like, all it's offloading is like, it's compositing the 3 camera feeds. But when you want to switch to a scene, you got to manually do it from 2 places. It's so annoying. So I guess they made like
it does take the load off of the computer.
Yeah.
So no encoding overloads ever, right?
Yeah. It's just that I feel like their whole shtick is like, oh well, check out this more expensive thing that would make your life easier. But I'm like, how about you then not manufacture a cheaper version if that's gonna, you know?
Well, and it's not too cost effective, is it? Because you could just have a second computer for about the same price, and then you can configure a computer a lot better than you can configure a piece of hardware that is dedicated like that.
Exactly. And you can't like, even in terms of like overlays and stuff, it seems pretty limited. So I think I should do a hit piece on them. I think for what they are supposed to do, maybe they're good, but it's just like maybe software for up to like 2 cameras or 3 cameras or 4 cameras. Maybe just OBS is a lot more capable.
Yeah. It's strange to hear you defending OBS. You must really dislike this piece of hardware.
I love OBS. OBS hates me. OBS I put next to ReaPIR in terms of shit that is cheap and it works, and it's easy to configure, and everything is labeled what is labeled, and it's like fully customizable, and it doesn't think of the user as an idiot who doesn't need to be shown like certain things. It just gives you full control of everything. So I do love it, but OBS has started not liking me too much.
It happens from time to time. Recently on my stream, I synced the video and the audio, and then in the middle of the stream, I of course only noticed this after the fact when I was rewatching the stream to make sure that everything technically was going well. It wasn't, because it just desynced in the first 10 minutes, and the rest of the stream was desynced. And no apparent reason. I was not doing anything crazy on the computer. Sometimes I do, right? Sometimes I am benchmarking JSFX on my computer while I stream. So, of course, that could cause glitches, but I don't know, it just distinct. And it may happen again. I guess it was because I updated to 27.2, the newer version of OBS. So, yeah, who knows? Maybe I'm desynced now. You tell me.
Yeah, I was gonna check the sync, but if the sync is off, I'm not even gonna try and fix it. I'm just gonna know about it.
Yeah, and if it's desynced, it's probably on my side.
So yeah, we did. Well, let's I guess do the code review. Oh, I probably minimized it, and now it's no longer accessible. Something I noticed in the code, why did we do this again? Why are we dividing 1,000 by 1,000?
It's kind of silly. The purpose of this is we are converting from milliseconds into samples. How many samples make a certain amount of milliseconds? And what we need is 1,000 milliseconds, because that is pessimistically as much as we may have in terms of buffer size. The biggest buffer size in slider 2 you can see is 1,000 milliseconds. So we are using the formula for converting from milliseconds to samples. It just so happens that we want 1,000, which is a second. So we could just use sample rate times 0, sample rate times 1, sample rate times 2, sample rate times 3. But then we thought, well, but it's kind of nice that there's this parallel between the line that you have highlighted and the first line of the slider block. It's the same formula. Maybe we could even extract that formula into a function, and then the 1,000 would be the parameter passed to the function, while slider 2 on the first line of the slider block would be the parameter passed to the function. So it's easier to see what's alike and what's different. So that's the reason why we did this. Now, if you think it's too silly, you can go ahead and remove that. In fact, gain 1L starts at 0. We are multiplying by 0. So you can just say 0 there if you want.
0 here?
Yeah.
Oh, but wouldn't that make this whole thing?
The whole thing by 0?
Oh, we're multiplying by 0. I see. Well, let's keep it. I just found it interesting when I saw it. I didn't remember this whole thing that we're doing. So I think, yeah, and this took care of the step motion, right? At the bottom. No, this is the index. Where did we make it stepwise? I remember we did that. Oh, maybe here.
What do you mean by stepwise?
Like ramping the values.
Yeah. That's the line that is doing that.
Cool.
We are, so there is this parameter that is the speed parameter. It is related to slider 1, where we control the pitch ratio, and the speed is going to be in terms of playback speed. So the read head on the delay buffer is going to have that speed. It's going to move on the tape with that speed. And the way that we are updating the speed with respect to slider 1 is using this slew limiting formula that is taking the maximum and the minimum between the parameter that we care about, which is slider 1, and we subtract speed to say, okay, so I want to get to slider 1. I'm currently at speed, so this is the path that I need to travel. And then or in other words, the slew, the change that I want to apply, and then I limit that change to the maximum and the minimum, the value that works well, which is something that you tuned by listening to the thing. Yeah, so that's the thing that is doing the ramping. It's effectively a low-pass filter if you want to think about it this way.
Mm-hmm.
There is a signal, which is not the audio signal, it's the signal of the position of slider 1. We are low-pass filtering it with this very naive filter.
Cool. So what haven't we done right now?
I think that the biggest thing right now is we are, to recap, the main thing that we do on this effect is we have a delay line. So as samples come in, we store the samples in this chunk of memory, in this buffer. And then we replay stuff from the buffer, but we don't replay at the same rate that we wrote. We are, of course, writing one sample every sample. So a sample comes in, we write it to the buffer. But we are reading it sometimes faster, sometimes slower than we are writing. So there is this window, what we call the buffer size.
Mm-hmm.
And we traverse this buffer size. Let's say that we are doing a pitch shifting to make things sound higher pitched. So we are traversing that buffer faster than we are writing to it, which means that we don't have enough samples to keep playing. This is a real-time audio effect. So at some point, we will have to wrap back and start replaying something that we have already played. And that's really because we are doing this so fast, you probably will not hear this as a delay. You will hear this as a pitch change. And if there are 2 executions in a row, ideally, you would not be able to hear the transition. So I think that the biggest thing we would have to do is to crossfade the end of one run with the beginning of the next one, so you don't hear a click in the transition.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just putting a text also on the bottom saying that the sync is bad, because the sync is not good, but I just don't know how to fix it, because I tried to watch this stream, but then I kind of lose you. So,
okay.
you know, everybody accept our apologies, or accept my apologies. Leandro didn't do anything.
Well, I updated OBS, and I think that may have weird effects, so it's also on me.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess let's not talk about OBS anymore. I was gonna say, are you using OBS right now? But you're not.
I am.
Oh, you are, because you're sending to the OBS. Yeah.
Yeah, OBS is taking out the green screen behind me.
So, okay, so we wanted to implement this into the bigger kind of ping pong delay, but that could also be my homework if we don't want to like do it right now.
Yeah, that idea is actually complicated. It turns out. I spent this week thinking about this effect for a while, and it is interesting but not exactly trivial to integrate this into the delay, because we could think of these 2 things as 2 boxes. We could think of the delay as one box, and then the pitch shifting as a separate box. And that will work. But I think it's smarter if we thought of the delay, which has a circular buffer. We could use that circular buffer from the delay to do the pitch shifting. So we would sort of mush the 2 boxes into one.
Yeah.
And then the buffer that we have here on the pitch shifter would be the same as the buffer over there on the delay. And that is, I think, a smarter move. And because it allows you to modulate things like the height of the ball, which is not something that we currently can do. So we could modulate that. We could use this idea of interpolation to do that smoothly. So it is a bit more complicated than, or it can be a bit more complicated if we want to make things nicer. We can also just think of these 2 boxes as separate things, and then that will work well, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that we need to have something functional here, and I think that the clicks are a deal breaker. That's not musical at all. So I think that doing the crossfading is, I think it's necessary. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do that, because and I guess this would be like a feature request, but just because the sound to me is so similar to the whammy bar, I thought this would be a really good kind of JSFX to have as like a whammy bar. And maybe one thing we can implement kind of later on, so do the crossfading thing, but also another thing to implement that would be cool would be if you could choose this to be like a smooth, I guess, latch. So for example, if I assign this to a MIDI controller, I can have a setting that I would turn it on, and as I move this up and down, when I release, it smoothly goes back to 0, kind of like a pitch bend wheel does.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But like just does it in a smooth way. So you can even assign it to maybe like a button. So you hit the button and it goes wee, and you let go of the button and it goes kind of deal.
So, well, which one? Is it a pitch wheel where you go wherever you want, but it snaps back when you release, or do you want it to be a button?
I think a button would be more useful because probably you don't want to go to 13 semitones anyway. So if it's a knob, then getting it precisely to say an octave would possibly be harder. Whereas if it was a button, and maybe the user will like set here the button like destination to whatever they want, and then you release and it goes back to normal. That would be a dope whammy bar kind of thing. That like there's versions of it out there, but like having a JSFX version would be cool. And maybe there's a JSFX version for it, but you know.
Probably there is. There is a JSFX for everything. But I mean, there is a JSFX for pitch shifting, right? There is the pitch shifter 2 that comes with ReaPIR. So we are here to learn and to have fun and to come up with our own tweaks on things, right? The whole ping pong ball is entirely your idea. I have never heard of that before. So that's why we learn about these things and we create these things. As we learn about the algorithms, other ideas come out, right? So, and then let's not pretend that we are creating innovative, completely new stuff, because pitch shifting, it has been done before. And there is also another pitch shifter by Psyche that is, I think, that the pitch shifter that comes with ReaPIR is sort of based on this idea of replaying a circular buffer in different speeds. But I think that Psyche is using FFTs, which is another way of doing it. So you take a signal from the time domain, you go to the frequency domain, you shift everything by the amount that you want, and then you do an inverse FFT to go back.
This is the one that I have right now?
Yeah, that one. Yeah, I was speaking at the source code for this one, and I think that that's what that one is doing.
Let's maybe hear it. And then play speed, that's the step, like, increment? Or no? Okay, I see.
I think that these two sliders add together, so you can choose to slide with semitones, or you can choose to go with playback speed.
Oh, I see. Cool. It's nice. Oh yeah, and I guess this is like the window size that we have, but it's got like set values in it versus.
Yeah, if I understand correctly, I didn't really read the source code. I just thought I looked for pitch shifter in JSFX and I saw this one and I clicked on edit and I was like on this screen for a split second. But I do know that there is this technique, and because I saw powers of 2, I immediately thought, I think he's doing FFTs there. But yeah, there is this technique that I explained on a high level, and Yeah, and then there is this notion of a window again. This time it's not that you are going to be replaying on that window and you need to crossfade, but it's the window that you take the FFT off.
Mm.
And he's also doing interpolation there, but he's doing something smarter. If you go to the library, I think it's not on this file. I think it's on the library file. You can scroll up and find the import line and double click on the import. It will take you to the library file. But this one, yeah, it is. But this one is doing interpolation, not with linear interpolation like we are doing. Linear interpolation is probably the second simplest interpolation, as I mentioned last time. But this one is using Lagrange interpolation, which is not the end of the world. As you can see, it's just a bunch of lines. It's not something too crazy, but it tries to find a polynomial that on linear interpolation, we have two samples and we look
for a midpoint.
We draw a line between them. This one looks at, I think, 4 samples and tries to draw, or maybe 5 samples, and tries to draw a polynomial that is the lowest order polynomial that is going to go over all the points.
Cool. Oh, like, yeah, like it tries to figure out, oh, like this curve's destination is going like the other way. Like between samples A and B, it may be changing direction. So it tries to figure that out. Cool.
Yeah. Essentially, it's connecting the dots, but not with straight lines. It's connecting the dots with the polynomial of the least degree. So you know how when there are 2 points, you can draw a line. When there are 3 points, you can draw a parabola. When there are 4 points, you can draw, I don't know, the shape
like a
of
sine wave,
curve,
basically.
but you can draw a curve.
Like a swish.
Yeah, it depends on where the points are. But yeah, so that's what this interpolation mechanism is doing. It's looking at more points. It's slightly fancier. I don't think it affects the audio too much from what I read. Like on Will Pirkel's book that we are reading on the C++ study group, he says that for like delay lines, for delays, not necessarily for pitch shifting, but for delays, it's probably good enough to do linear interpolation, and it's less expensive computationally.
Yeah, because I guess the effect would be that maybe you get like a little more of a square waveform, like a squared off thing, which would just kind of sound a little digital and a little nice, and nobody's expecting a pitch shift to sound, you know, like true to life.
Yeah. And I think that the effect of linear interpolation is that it's a low-pass filter. And depending on the material, you may care about this.
Yeah.
You may not want to low-pass if you're trying to do pitch shifting at high speeds. And speaking of low-pass filter, there's something actually interesting. I was also peeking at the implementation that comes with ReaPIR, the pitch shifter 2. And what they have there is this, it's a filter. So if you are pitch shifting down, you can do a low-pass filter on the thing. I don't know what the purpose is. I don't know what happens when you're just pitch shifting down. Why would that introduce any problems?
Maybe it's because the noise that would normally be between like 15 and 20K, and you pitch shift down an octave, and now it's at 7.5K, and that's like very decently audible.
Yeah, there is that, and there is also, I guess, many algorithms will do some sort. Many algorithms and even hardware are going to do some sort of anti-aliasing filter. So essentially, it's going to have some junk on the band between like 20K and 24K. There's going to be some junk there, and if you pitch shift down, that junk is going to be right in the middle of the spectrum. So that's why they have that there. Yeah, and we can do that. We know how to do a low-pass filter at this point.
Yeah,
so
that's easy. Cool. So I guess let's do the crossfading thing.
Yeah, sure. And there are some things that I was thinking about it this whole week. I didn't have access to the code though, because I don't think you're pushing this anywhere.
I can if you want.
So I didn't have access to the code, but No, it's fine. I could also have just watched the stream again, but I was remembering this and I was remembering it right. We are doing something silly. We started to do something silly. We didn't really finish. But the silly thing is that we have 2 grains per channel. And that's unnecessary. We could just have one buffer where we write to and have 2 playheads. So we're not even using, that's why I said that we started to do something silly. We didn't finish doing the silly thing because we are not using the grain 2. We're just using grain 1 everywhere. But you can just delete those 2 lines, grain 2L and grain 2R. We don't need that. We can just write to the buffer all the same and read from 2 locations if we want.
So that is silly because, like, I mean, like, you're not gonna have different buffer sizes for your different left and right channels. Is that why?
No. It has nothing to do with the channels. It has all to do with the fact that we want to do a crossfade. So that's why we had those 2 circular buffers there. So to do the crossfade, we want to read from the end and from the beginning of the buffer at the same time, right? We want to splice those 2 together. So we want to read from both of them and play back both of them, applying different gains to each. But still, we want to read from multiple locations. And my naive idea last week was, okay, if we want to read from multiple locations, let's write the data to multiple locations. But that's completely unnecessary. The data is going to be the same. So it's like something gets to you and you need to take note of it, and you think, oh, I will need to read this note twice, so let me write it in 2 pieces of paper, which makes no sense.
Yeah, I see. You just read it again. Cool. Hi, Jim, by the way. Nice to have you here. It's been a while. I'm not coming back strong to the streaming game, but thanks to everybody who sees past the audio quality and sync man and just takes in the gold that Leandro has given us.
And Aria, of course. I mean, who comes up with all these nice ideas
these
for
wacky
effects?
stuff.
Yeah, those are the good ones. Right, so now we have just one buffer, that's all right. And then we have the buffer index, that's our write head. That's where we are going to write to. And then we have the speed, which is just the pitch ratio. So that's why it says 1.5 in the beginning. And then on the slider block, we are computing the buffer size, which is going to be the size of our grain or the size of our window. And what's interesting to note is that the buffer size is not necessarily the same as the amount of memory that we are allocating for the buffer. So maybe the name is not perfect because the size of the buffer, the length of the number of items in the buffer, we don't change. We allocate that memory in the init block, and we are going to keep that memory forever. And buffer size is the slice or the size of the window, how much of this buffer we are actually going to read and write to. Or actually, how much of this buffer we are going to read from. Because I say that I propose, and if it's not implemented like that, I'm not sure it is. Yeah, it's not. It's not implemented like that. So I think we need to change that. I think that we should be writing to the entirety of the buffer. We are allocating in the init block 1 full second worth of buffer, and I think we should be writing to the whole buffer. We should be reading, taking in account the buffer size, right? We don't want to read, we don't want the grain size to be 1 second all the time, but we should be writing to the whole buffer the whole time. And I say that because think about the case where you have a pitch of 1.5 or a speed of 1.5, and then you slow it down to 1. Depending on the scenario, if that happens too fast and whatever, you may be trying to read stuff from further in the past because you're not when you're changing the speed. I misspoke. Not when you're changing the speed. When you're modulating the buffer size, right? So think about you modulating the buffer size for whatever reason, because different buffer sizes are going to have different effects. So you may, for sound design purposes, modulate the buffer size. And if you modulate the buffer size, your buffer may be getting bigger, and you may be trying to read things from further in the past. But if you do that, it's going to be junk in there as it stands. As the code reads right now, there is going to be some junk in there because the write head hasn't visited the location yet. Right as the buffer size expanded, the write head didn't have a chance to wrap back and go there, so you're reading junk. So I think that on the last line of the effect, where we say buffer index plus equals 1, blah, 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 we should not be checking against the buffer size. We should be checking against 1,000 divided by 1,000 times sample rate, which is the maximum buffer that we may have, the maximum buffer size that we may have. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I had a quick follow-up about that. So say we're always writing to 1 second of a buffer, right?
Yeah, now we will be.
So then if my window size is, say, 200 milliseconds, it takes the first 200 milliseconds of the buffer, and then for the remaining 800 milliseconds, kind of, for the lack of a better word, like loops that 200 millisecond window. If I change it, then it knows where to get this extra input. If I increase the size from 200 to 600, then it already has access to all those samples to add to the window, right? This is the thing we're solving?
Yeah. So the idea is that if you take your buffer size, which is the size of your window, and it's like 200 milliseconds, so you are looking at this window, going over it in circles, 200 milliseconds, but you are actually that small window is moving along. It's moving to the end of the buffer and then wrapping back. That window is kind of following the buffer index or the write head. And then if you want to modulate the buffer size, now we allow for that, or we won't produce any clicks or any weird noises, because as you increase the buffer size, you are just telling the read head, okay, now you should go further back in the past, but the write head, which is the buffer index, has been writing data all along. So the data is there for the read head to visit.
And the past is the future because we're in a circular buffer. So if you go too far, that part, I love that part. That's cool. Cool. Okay, so we did that.
Yeah, okay, so now we can reason about this last line one more time, just make sure that it's right. So what we do is we take the buffer index, which is a variable that is supposed to go from 0 up to the size of the buffer and then wrap back. So we add 1 to the buffer index and then we check, are we greater than or equal to the maximum size of the buffer or the memory space that we have allocated? If that's the case, then wrap back and say that the buffer index is equal to 0 again. So that's taking care of the write head, the pointer where we write to. There is one next thing that is kind of silly that we are doing, and that is on the sample block, focus on the second and third lines there. We are writing to the circular buffer. And what's silly about this, go ahead.
We're writing the left to the left, we're writing the right to the right.
Yeah, so that's okay. But the silly thing about what we are doing is that don't think about when the plugin has just started. It has been running for a while, and we have, like, let's say 1,000 samples. We have our write head in some location, and we are about to do something interesting. We are about to, like, do the playback, right? And the first thing we do on the sample block is we write to that location. So it's just so off by one thing, but we are losing one one item, one sample, one piece of information. We are overwriting it before we get a chance to read it.
Okay, so this needs to go,
So,
like we just need to move these lines of code around a little bit.
yeah, just move it down as anything that happens after SPL0 equals SPL1 equals blah, blah, blah. Anything that happens after that is okay. Yeah, probably before writing the buffer index. Yeah, so that's perfect. So now it's just a one sample. It's just a one sample difference, but it is a difference. Now we have one more sample to play with. And this off by one mistake kind of reminds me of an off by one mistake that I made in the auto mixer, where I report latency based on the size of the buffer because I have a look ahead parameter, and I was reporting it. I did the exact same mistake. So I was reporting one more sample than I should, which means that if you had no look ahead, it was still going to say, it's going to declare to ReaFIR that it had one sample of
I see.
Delay. And then, of course, ReaFIR cannot work with the granularity of one sample of delay. It has to allocate a whole block. So, for instance, in my case, it was allocating 1,024 samples worth of delay for no look ahead at all, which is absolutely silly. So, yeah. And we already looked at the first line in the sample block. That's just updating the speed based on the smoothing of slider 1. Then we do small sample L and big sample L. The intent here is we want to get the sample that we want to reproduce, but the sample may be like 3.5. The sample that we want to reproduce is 3.5 because we are incrementing in steps of 1.5. So we may get to fractional values. And so we get the left-hand side one, the right-hand side one, and then we average the two with different weights to do linear interpolation. So that's what's happening there. So I think that what we need now is we need to we need to see what we need to do, actually. Because if we are in the middle of the window, we are going over this window. If we are in the middle of the window, the code that we have works. Nothing to change about that. But if we are at the edges of the window, then we want to crossfade.
Otherwise, we're interpolating two unrelated samples.
No, it's not the interpolation that is the issue, because we are taking care of wrapping the index around with the modulo buffer size and all of that. The issue is we want to remove the clicks when the playhead is going from the playhead is wrapping back,
cool.
Right? Yeah, the readhead, it is moving faster. It may be moving faster than the write head. So at some point, we are going to have played all the samples we had, so we need to wrap back. In this moment where we are wrapping back, we are introducing a click, because you are immediately going from one sample to a completely unrelated sample. And if one was like 0.7 and the next is minus 0.3, it's going to be a click. So what we want is to check where in the window we are. And I guess that is probably going to be another slider, because we need to ask the user, or maybe we decide this, but we need to know what is the size of this crossfade.
Oh, I think we should decide it.
2 that comes with ReaFIR. In Pitch Shifter 2, they give you an option. And I think that in Psyche's Pitch Shifter, he also gives you an option.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's not like gonna be a nightmare to give it as an option, and we'll set the default to, I know like the whammy bar does like a set amount of crossfade, but yeah, let's give it to him.
Well, if you want to do a set amount on the delay, the ping pong delay, that may be like an advanced kind of option. We probably don't want to present that right away.
It's a premium feature.
Right? Yeah. But maybe for this, maybe just to test things out, it may be
Sure.
advantageous to have a slider for this. So the so we're talking about now the size of the crossfade. This needs to be smaller than the buffer size.
Yeah, I think I read something that 4 samples is the minimum crossfade amount.
I
That's
didn't know
yeah,
that.
like you need 4 samples to do it smoothly. If you have less, you can crossfade the values, but it will still may contain a jump. So the like you need 4 minimum to make it smooth and like inaudible.
Okay, okay. And when I say the length of a crossfade, do you think? Can you do something for me? Can you go in the ReaFIR timeline, put 2 items and crossfade
Yeah.
them so it can have something that we can look at?
Joinks. I can even do this. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I say the length of the crossfade, can you like highlight the area or the portion of the timeline that you think is the length of the crossfade?
To me, this is the length of the crossfade, like the left and right lines that are moving, not the center line. Because this is the length that it takes from
Okay.
0 for this side to ramp up, and it's the same amount for this side to ramp down.
Okay. And of course, here we have one crossfade in front of us, but this is going to be a circular buffer. It's going to be around and around and around. So for each one of the items, where the item here is the circular buffer, for each one of these items, there will be 2 crossfades, one on the left and one on the right, which means that the length of the crossfade can be at most, or probably should be at most, half the length of the item itself.
Otherwise, I mean,
Does that
yeah,
make sense?
otherwise, like this crossfade, if it gets bigger, I mean, how would that even work? It would get into the next crossfade.
Yeah, and of course that can work. Then instead of crossfading 2 items, we would be crossfading 3 items. And we can do that. ReaFIR can do lanes, so you can crossfade however many items you want. But I think that it makes more sense if we say that it's half the length of the item. So coming back to the slider definitions. Oh, you are doing that. Okay, yeah, see?
I love the kind of image that this creates because it's very, whoa, I did something weird. Because it's like, did they make you draw stuff like this in geometry class when you were in high school?
I don't remember, but I probably would have liked
Yeah,
that.
it's fun.
It reminds me of one of those toys. I don't remember the name, but there is like a circle and another circle that goes in the middle, and then you put your pen on one of the circles and you move it around.
Yeah.
What is the name of that?
Well, it's a type of a stencil, but I don't know exactly. It's just a spiral stencil thing.
Yeah. Right, so what we want to do is probably not allow for
Yeah,
this,
they don't want to
this
get
thing
too
that we
nuts.
have on the screen. So we probably want it to have as half of the buffer size.
So the maximum would be 500.
So I guess the buffer size is at least 3 milliseconds, so we should say that the crossfade is at least 1.5 milliseconds. And it goes up to 500 milliseconds on steps of 0.25 milliseconds. And by default, it should be something sensible, because I think that 1.5 may be too little to do the crossfade. I don't know, what is your configuration in ReaPIR when you do a split and it creates a crossfade? What is your configuration? By default,
10.
it's like it's 10 milliseconds, right? That's the default, I think.
1.5 is still a decent amount. Like, I mean, like, I guess we can even test this with audio. So if I'll make a random chop here, and then I'll duplicate this.
Can you not make it random because you may have hit a 0 crossing by accident? Can you make it
like
on purpose be something
shit here? Let's do the split here, and then duplicate this and make sure the beginning of this is also pretty shit. Like, maybe I gotta take snap of maybe this. Get the hell out of here. I'm gonna remove the face just to make sure. Yeah, that's a pretty disastrous amount. So I will crossfade these, and I can check the length, but I can just set the crossfade also from here. Let's see, we need 1 millisecond, right?
You could just right click on the thing to go to the crossfade editor.
Oh, I may have changed that. I'm at the maximum.
Or
no,
maybe it's
I
command, double
do
click,
have,
or editor. There you go, yeah.
Units, seconds, and I want the length to be 1. Whoops, what the hell happened there?
Yeah. Did it go to the next crossfade?
Possibly did, yeah. It was right here, right? Why would you just go? I think this is the one. This looks like 1.5 milliseconds. Let's extend this. Let's loop this. No, yeah, I hear it. You hear it too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that 1.5 is probably, well, but if your window size is 3 milliseconds, then there is nothing
Yeah,
else you can
better.
do. Well, maybe we should say that maybe we should say that a 3 millisecond window is not good. Maybe we can do that.
Yeah, I agree. Let's maybe make the window size minimum to be like 20 milliseconds. That's still like barely enough milliseconds to even get any perception of pitch. So why don't we make that? Make the minimum of that 20, make the minimum of this 10, and set the default maybe even to, well, set the default to 10 as well, I guess. 10 to 500 at 1. Increments of 1 is enough, right?
It may be. I was thinking of increments of 0.25 just because it's half of the increment for the buffer size.
Sounds reasonable. And then we'll call this, I don't want to call this like crossfade amount because then you need to actually know what the hell we're crossfading. So I'm just going to call this smoothness. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that. In fact, many pitch shifters tend to expect that you know what's happening.
Yeah.
At least the ones in ReaFIR. But then other pitch shifters, I guess more often than not, they don't even show you this parameter.
Right.
They may show you the buffer size that has a sonic effect, and it may have different uses, but the smoothness, I don't think many pitch shifters present you. But in any case, yeah, right. So now we know the amount that we want to crossfade. So we need to check in the point that you have the comment say interpolation action, we need to check if we are in the crossfade or not, right?
Mm-hmm. By the way, spirograph is the name of the thing. Yes.
Oh, spirograph, that's the thing that I was talking about, exactly. It's a lot of fun. I like that. It's the kind of art that appeals to me.
Yeah.
So how do we check this? Well, to check if our readhead is in the crossfade, we need to know where our readhead even is. Mm-hmm. And we calculate that on the next line where it says sample, small sample L, grain 1L, and then we calculate that readhead. And we are calculating the readhead in the brackets, so it's right then and there. But now we'll need to do more work with this position besides just what we are doing. So I think it's intelligent for us to extract this formula into a variable because we'll need to do more things. We'll need to check if it's in a certain range.
This whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and does it need to? It needs to be in the sample block, or can it be in the init block?
It needs to be in the sample block because the buffer index will keep changing.
And we'll call this readhead position.
Sure. And there is something else. You know how the speed is being changed right below?
Right, so it needs to be below that
So,
too.
yeah, no, it doesn't need to, but what you did is not the same as what we had before. If you extracted the variable there, it has a different meaning, and it's only off by 1 again. And the speed is so granular that you will never be able to notice, but it's just something to be aware. When you're extracting the variable, you have to think about the dependencies. What does this formula that I'm extracting, what does it depend on? It depends on the speed. So if I put it above the speed, that's going to have a different meaning.
So I guess we call it readhead position equals this, and then I'll go and replace this in the places, which there is an automated way, but we're not going to do it because it's not a lot of places. Joinks and...
Oh, you actually replaced something that is not the same. Undo.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, this is +1. You're right.
Yeah, this is +1. So the idea is that we are looking at a sample and we are looking at the sample next to that. That's why there is a +1 there. But now that we have the readhead position, so we could say readhead position +1 modulo buffer size.
Readhead position
and
+1.
then we would be reusing the readhead position formula, which is kind of
so
nice.
Should I then put this in the... I should take this out of the variable?
No. I think that having that there will be good for us, because we will need to do more things, like we will need to check if we are on top of the crossfade or not. But I think that having that at buffer size will help us, because we know that the number is between 0 and buffer size. So the thing that you have there is doing... It seems like it's not equivalent, but it kind of is, because when you do when you do modulo buffer size over and over, doesn't change the meaning of the variable. So it's actually equivalent to what we had before.
But does that mean that just erasing it would also be okay?
Not quite, because if our readhead position is exactly at the last position, it's exactly on top of the right head, then we would be overflowing.
Yeah, gotcha.
So we could be overflowing right on that position. So again, off by 1 mistake. And in many cases, it may not be heard, because what is next to the first buffer? The second buffer for the right hand side. So there will be something related there. The audio will be similar, probably. And what is next to the right buffer? It's silence.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of zeros. So it's an off by 1 mistake that you may never hear.
Yeah,
but
you can't hear one sample of nothing, right? Like one sample is not even anything.
Well, you can. That's what an impulse is. And you can hear that as a click.
An impulse is 1 sample long? I didn't know that. I thought it's 1 millisecond long.
No, well, the ideal impulse, of course, you cannot reproduce this in real life, because it has infinite energy, or not, it doesn't have infinite energy. It has energy in infinitely many bands. Has energy across the spectrum up to infinity. So it doesn't really occur in real life. When you think about an impulse in real life, you think about a clap or someone popping a balloon. And in all those cases, it's not just one sample, of course. But in digital systems, when you want to like take the impulse response of a plugin, you can send a sample that is 1 and then a bunch of zeros. And that is your ideal impulse response. Yeah.
Sorry, 1 second. My cat is being weird. What? Hello. Sorry, I don't know. She's signaling to me that I need to come help, but she doesn't want anything. You know how they be. So also here we're using grain 1L. We're not really using grain 1R.
Well, that is because we wanted to save ourselves some copying and pasting, or we may in the future just extract this into functions so we don't have to copy and paste. But you see how we are doing SPL0 equals SPL1 equals something? Yeah.
Okay.
But it is good to have grain 1R there, and maybe your homework can be to make this stereo or multi-channel if you want.
Multi-channel's hard.
Ah, and I'll take this tangent actually. I want to ask you this. When you have a chain of plugins and you have like a compressor in the
Yeah.
middle, and you want to sidechain something to the compressor, you can just grab the root from some other track and drop it on the compressor. That's going to create a sidechain.
Yeah.
But if the plugins before the compressor are multi-channel, they may grab the sidechain and process it,
Yeah.
right? What does ReaPIR do in that case? Is it going to be smart and think, okay, if you're dropping into the effect, then it's a sidechain, so I should not be sending those pins to everything before it? Or is it going to send this? Is it going to connect the pins to all the effects before? Because in that case, having a multi-channel effect may actually be annoying.
Yeah, we should test this, but off the top of my head, since when you do that sidechaining thing, it comes here and it just changes the number of track channels, I think that does get transmitted to all the plugins that are on the track. So if they are multi-channel enabled, I think, yeah, they do be doing that. But will the pins be automatically connected? Do you want to just quickly test this out?
Yeah, I'm thinking about this because I am making my effects multi-channel when possible.
Yeah.
And I was thinking that that was a good thing, but I don't know, from your perspective, would you like a plugin that is multi-channel without you asking, or would you be annoyed by this edge case I just mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, like so often, and this is one of those things too, where like ReaPIR is so good, you have to relearn some stuff, and many people don't. So, like, I have stereo mind because in other DAWs you had the stereo track. So if I'm doing something multi-channel, like even up to recently, if I needed like a 5.1 reverb, I would just get 3 reverbs, and I would have one of them for 1 2, one of them for 3 4, one of them for 5 6. And that comes from the old thinking of DAWs where you had stereo tracks, you had to kind of find a way around that, or 5.1 tracks were only for Pro Tools Ultimate, blah blah blah. So would I be annoyed? Yeah, I would be annoyed if I didn't know, I guess. Yeah, I would be annoyed if I found out, oh, like my sidechain that I'm not even hearing is like being EQ'd by my EQ that goes before the thing. I suppose I would be slightly perturbed. Wait, this is the wrong thing. I'm just gonna grab whatever. Let's just grab ReaComp. I'm seeing these won't work because they're mono, so let's just use stereo. Let's do, why not Psyche Pitch Shifter? That's got 2 in 2 out.
Well, but that's a stereo effect. It doesn't apply. Let me think of an effect
What about
that
one of
is
yours?
multi-channel. Yeah, my effects are multi-channel. Just drop a volume effect that I developed there.
LeoFi.
I'm great at naming things. Yeah, I'll fix all of this.
Let's see.
Gain.
Okay. I was looking for volume. And then, so now it's 2 in 2 out. And now I'll put ReaComp here. Where's my, oh, I'm in the wrong thing. Shaky hands. Okay. And then I'll, from this track, do, well, I guess let's check it before. I think I already dropped it in. This is 2 in 2 out. This already has 2 4 in and outs. So I think if we drag it in, it's connected. It's not even connected here. What up with that?
Well, you drop it into the track, which is
dumb.
going to send it to channels 1 and 2. You need to drop it into
Okay, I
recomp.
thought I dropped it into recomp, but okay. And then coming back here.
Now it's sidechain.
Yes. Yeah, it does do that.
So yeah, the volume is affecting the
Yeah.
sidechain. I thought that was the case. Now, the reason why I brought this up is that by default all my effects are multi-channel. So what do you think? Should I make my effects stereo or multi-channel by default?
I mean, if you want to be really cool about it, you can have a stereo and then you can have a multi-channel version. But mostly I would think like, okay, I mean, like, okay, first of all, mid-side encoder and decoder, that would just make sense stereo.
That one is stereo, actually.
I think like, well, oscilloscopes and stuff, multi-channel, because it doesn't actually affect the sound, right? It just shows you the sound. But like, yeah, bit crushing, you know, make it stereo. Like, people aren't bit crushing a whole 5.1 audio file, I don't think, right? Maybe they're bit crushing ambisonics. Yeah, I think make them stereo, or because okay, the fix for that, once you know about it, is this, right? We fixed it. So it could be just somehow like notifying people that this is what you got to do in case of a sidechain, and you don't need to touch the code. And it is nice for anybody, because also we don't know what people are up to. Maybe somebody is bit crushing a whole 5.1 sound. So yeah, may.
Yeah, I thought that maybe what I could do is by default stereo. And maybe a drop-down menu, maybe a hidden option, multi-channel.
Okay.
Because the code for it is relatively straightforward, but it's just a usability kind of thing and expectations. I guess it's dealing with the user's expectations.
Yeah. Well, yeah, if a drop-down can fix it, that would be cool, because then it would be like the drop-down kind of determines the tree that the code goes down in. Like, either it goes to a place where the two channels are like copied, or it goes through your like little, let's call it, algorithm with the indexing the channels and going through them, right?
Yeah, I think that the way I would implement this is I will have a loop. I don't want to copy and paste code.
I see.
I will have a loop, but in my loop size, it will be, if the drop-down menu says stereo, my loop size is 2. If my drop-down menu says multi-channel, my loop size is the number of channels. It's as simple as that. It's a single line of code that it has to change.
Yeah, that sounds like the perfect solution.
Okay. Yeah. I'll do that then. Yeah, I think it can be nice to have an EQ that you can do EQ moves on all 6 channels at once without having to have 3 tracks and try to link all of them.
Yeah.
I don't think that many EQ moves you want to do in all tracks in all channels at once, but you can. You may want to compress all channels at once because you don't want your it's no longer the stereo image, so I guess it's the multi-channel image. You don't want it moving around, so you may want to compress the whole signal at once.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that could be cool.
And I mean, people do, for example, in big theaters, if you are doing a 5.1 movie, there's like it's basically a 6 dB per octave low pass filter starting at 3K, and that's like a standard. You have to have that on all your channels. You won't have it on all channels. You will have it, this theater will put that on, but then it would be cool if with your EQ I can make the reverse of that EQ move happen, so I can kind of imagine what things sound like in the theater, right? So it's all definitely EQing and compressing and stuff on all channels is totally done.
Yeah, right. It will be, it's like sidechaining. You have to be in the know. You have to create more channels on the track. You have to move pins around. So it's not like the default.
Yeah.
You have to know what you're doing. But I guess multi-channel can be like that for most plugins. Like, what prevents you from wanting to do pitch shifting on 5 channels?
Right. Yeah.
5.1. Right. So
Hello, Bo. How's it going?
coming back to... Oh, Bo is here. Hello, Bo. Since I was taking a tangent, do you want to take another one and talk about your new job? Because Bo asked, and now Bo is
Oh,
here.
sure. So, I mean, it's the same job I've been doing for a while, but I was doing it kind of like as a part-time contractor, and now I went full-time with them. I guess I do editing. It's a TV station that does like grassroots coverage, journalism stuff, things that like the mainstream media doesn't talk about, man, but they genuinely don't. Like nobody in the Canadian mainstream media. The goal of the Canadian mainstream media is to be like, oh, Canada, oh, we just apologize to each other and drink maple syrup from a barrel. But in reality, like Canada is doing all kinds of international crimes, all kinds of local crimes that some people are pushing to call an apartheid, because what Canada does to its indigenous population is totally apartheid. Like, who are we joking? They're building a pipeline through entire lands owned by indigenous people, and all of that. And then Canada has this front of like, oh, Trudeau, I'm just a handsome boy. I didn't do anything, but like they're the worst. So the journalism part I really enjoy. They talk about like defunding the police. They try to show the true face of Canadian politics, which I think, like, even as somebody who lives in Canada, like I didn't know. I didn't know the kind of shit that they do. Um, and I'm their like tech person, so I do some video editing for them. I am running a live stream that they're doing now. It's like a weekly live stream show where there are two people at the studio and two people joining us via. It was going to be Zoom, but I made them use Skype. And yeah, I gotta like I'm the tech side of things. So we got like three computers. One is just doing audio, then sending an XLR out to this Atom system, and that's taking the cameras and then sending that. And then the Atom system has a computer in front of it where somebody's operating the switcher, and both of those go to a third computer that's basically just doing the stream. But also kind of jump in on the calls on the Skype to grab the NDI, but its microphone and speakers are muted, and then all of that goes to the stream. Yeah, that's the new job. And then anybody who wants, the studio is like a co-op space, so you can pay $20 a year, which is great. And then you can rent all the equipment you want for free, and then you can use the studio whenever you want. So people come and do podcasts and live streams, and I go help them out, set the stuff up. It's really fun. It's a really good place.
Sounds like a lot
Yeah,
of fun.
it's like everybody's like stuff is different. Everybody's needs are different. We got tons of equipment to work with, like tons of different mics, tons of different cameras and lenses and lighting rigs and stuff. And people come and like get them, and like I'm learning a lot about the camera side of things, which is really cool, because I always wanted to have that knowledge, and I'm kind of slowly getting it. Sadly, in 3 months I'll be gone from this city, so this is very temporary, but like I also have to train a replacement for myself, and everybody's like, oh, there's no one like you, and I'm like, yes, keep talking.
Interesting. So the audio editing, the video editing, and running the studio, do you do all that in ReaPIR?
Yeah, I do all the editing that I'm given in ReaPIR, for the video and podcast. I record all the audio in ReaPIR, so all the audio comes out of the interface, and then Skype audio comes into ReaPIR. I mix all of that. I make mix minuses. I use Auto Mixer, and I'm going to get Tri-Leveler to put on top of that, because so far I've been doing like Auto Mixer plus like a compressor. But like I guess Tri-Leveler would be a cooler way of doing that, and possibly even seeing if I can eliminate the channel-based compressors. And then limiting, and then audio goes out of the ReaPIR to the stream. So yeah, ReaPIR is like the audio central for everything, and we were using this other program called Ecamm, and I also was like, let's lose Ecamm and use OBS. Yeah, so full-on ReaPIR and OBS setup we got going on there. And I do some workshops for them, so maybe I was thinking, I asked them if I can stream the workshops on my channel, and they were like, sure, so I may do that too.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's been fun.
All right. Okay, let's try to get this crossfade.
Let's do it.
Now we have the readhead explicitly as a variable. And we have to check if we are in the crossfade. And that means, because of the way that we reason about the crossfade, it means that we need to check if we are on the first 10 milliseconds of the block, or if we are in the last 10 milliseconds of the block. So I guess we want to translate from milliseconds into samples. I guess that's a good first step. And you know how to do that, so I'll let you do it.
Okay, so do I need to do that on the sample block though? I can just do it anywhere, right?
I can do it in the slider block because it's only dependent on slider 3.
So ms to samples is, let's see, well, the sample part will be, like, if we have 48,000 samples, it needs to be 1,000 milliseconds. So it is it this? Is it this weird thing? Okay.
Yeah, that's that.
And then, so the values we're getting here, how do we put this into the...
Except that this whole ms to samples, it's not just, we are not converting whatever from milliseconds to samples. We are converting what you are calling the smoothness or crossfade length, however you want to think about it. So we want to, instead of having 1,000 divided by 1,000, we want to have slider 3 divided by 1,000. And then we will have the smoothness in samples.
Gotcha. And one of these. And one of these.
Great. So now, instead of saying that we want to check if the readhead position is in the first 10 milliseconds, we can ask, is the readhead position in the first smoothness ms to samples?
Can't call it smoothness, right? It's too much, the other thing.
Okay. Right. So we want to check that. Now, what is the range of readhead position? It is going to be between 0 and buffer size.
Yeah.
So hang in there, let me think about this. Okay. Is that okay though? This should be with respect to the right head.
We're thinking of the maximum possible, right? Like what the maximum this value could be?
No. The reason why I'm hesitating here is that we fixed something and we broke something else in the process, I think. You know how we changed the last line that was wrapping the buffer index, which is our write head. It was wrapping based on the buffer size, and then we changed that to keep writing. So we are now using the whole buffer then the whole time, and we are only looking at a slice of it to read, but we are writing to the entirety of the buffer. Yeah, when we introduced that, we introduced a bug with respect to the read head position. The issue is, not before, the way it was before, we could always think of the window that we care about, because we have a buffer of 1 second, but we may care about 100 milliseconds worth of that. So this window of 100 milliseconds used to sit always in the beginning of the buffer. Now it's no longer the case. That window is with respect to the buffer index. Whatever the buffer index is, we are looking at 100 milliseconds before that. So the window used to be fixed, now it's moving. And our readhead used to be based on this assumption that we were in the beginning. That's why we say modulo buffer size, because it used to be in the beginning. But now we need to move it along as well. So
this also has to be modulo this crap. No, well, that will be just modulo sample right now.
No, it is still going to be modulo buffer size. The buffer size is going to determine what is the size of the window that we care about. That's still the same. So the modulo buffer size is not what concerns me. What concerns me is that now we have a number that is between 0 and buffer size, and that is our position in the window that we are reading. And it's a position that is moving left to right. That's all right. But the problem is it is always fixed in the beginning of the grain 1L. Always in the beginning of the big chunk of memory that we have to work with. What we want is to move this around. We want to move the readhead position around so that it will be with respect to the buffer index. Does that make sense?
Visually, yes.
So we will have to think. So we will have to think about this. Probably a figure would have helped, and I even stopped and thought, should I draw something? But let's not, because technically it will be hard to get in on the camera. But I guess when we get to the lines where we take the small sample L, big sample L, we'll have to think about this. We'll have to know that this readhead position is incorrect. But we'll get to that in a moment. Before, let's do the computation of whether we are in the crossfade or not, because that part is relatively easy at this point. We have the readhead position, and it's between 0 and the buffer size, which is correct. So this readhead position is relative to the buffer that we are interested in, the window that we are interested in. So we just need to check if the readhead position is less than the smoothness. That means we are in the crossfade to the left. We are fading in. And we also need to check if the readhead position is greater than
smoothness.
Buffer size minus smoothness. Because that indicates that we are on the right-hand side, we are fading out. How does all of this sound to you? Does that make sense? Okay, so let's start with the easy case, which is we are not crossfading, because that's the code we already have. So let's do a conditional there. We'll say readhead position is less than. And I wonder if it should be less than or equal. Off by one mistakes are easy to make in this condition. But yeah, let's just go with less than.
Am I doing the side of the less than correctly? Less than. Yes, that's.
No, that's not. Yeah, it's usually less than or equal, not equal or less than.
Let's just use.
So it's the other way around.
Or let's just not even use less than or equal to. It's less than.
Yeah, let's just use less than, because then it's a one sample a difference. That's not an issue, right? So if the readhead is less than the smoothness, then we are crossfading. So do it the other way around. Say readhead position is greater than smoothness.
Then.
Why is it trying to autocomplete with that long name? Do you still have the long name around somewhere?
I think I haven't saved and recompiled since then.
Okay. So if that's the case, but that's not the entirety of the conditional, you also have to check. So before you say question mark, say ampersand, which means
okay, yeah, we got and action going on.
And the readhead position needs to be less than
buffer size minus smoothness. Then,
and then question mark, and then open parentheses, and all the lines in this interpolation action
goes in there.
Paragraph that you have goes in there. Or maybe even the SPL0 stuff should also go in there.
Right. So if this is, we're saying if these two things are true, right? But wouldn't this be if these things were false? Like if these things don't happen, then this is what we're doing because we're doing it all along.
No, the idea that I have is, if those conditions are true, then we are not crossfading. We are in the middle. We are just going to play one sample, like we usually did.
Yeah, gotcha.
So that doesn't change. And the two last lines should not be in the conditional because they are writing to the buffer.
Okay.
And that has nothing to do with the playback. So now we have the same thing we used to have, except that we are not outputting anything when we are crossfading, right? And there is still that bug. We still have to take care of that bug. So do you want to do the crossfading part or taking care of the bug first?
Let's finish the crossfading part and then take care of the bug.
Okay, so now you want to say column and then open parens, and that's going to be a block of code that runs when we are crossfading. Not semicolon, it's just column, which means otherwise. It complements the question mark 5 lines above. And then open and close parens, semicolon, just to have everything syntactically correct. And then in those parens, don't put semicolon there. In those parens, we want to do something similar, except that we will be looking at 2 samples.
Yeah.
And we'll be crossfading the 2. So we have the readhead position for one of these 2 samples. Let's compute the readhead position for the other sample. How do we do that? I have an idea. It is kind of silly, but I think it will work. Do you have an idea?
My idea was to say, well, else if the readhead position is smaller than smoothness, then send it to me and I'll do something with it. But maybe that's like inefficient because then we got go. And also, if the thing is that, then send that to me and I'll do a bunch of fades, and these 2 codes may be like more efficient if they were written together. So yeah, I don't have an idea.
Yeah, so my idea is we have, let's say, a buffer of 100 samples, right? Our readhead position is, can you maybe write this down so we have the numbers in front of us? The whole buffer is, let's say that buffer size is 100. And let's say that the smoothness, which is the length of the crossfade, is 10. And let's say that our readhead position is 7. We should be crossfading. What should we be crossfading with?
With 3 samples with 3 samples at the end. Right, so a readhead position is at 1. We are doing the crossfading with -1, which is like 9. Or let's just do 1 with -1, 2 with -2, 3 with -3, 4 with -4. That would be like a linear crossfade, and we're not gonna do an S thing, right? That sounds like crazy talk.
Yeah.
So like this, like
it's not too crazy. It's not too hard. Yeah. Oh, actually, that makes me think that there is another issue. We are saying that the buffer size is 100 samples, and we are letting the read head position go from 0 to 99, right? Well, I don't think we should, because the sample that should come out as we are crossfading the beginning of something and the end of the other thing, it's literally the same point in time. Can you go back to the figure where you crossfaded two items?
Yeah. That's the maximum zone.
Yeah. So if you think about it like this, you have two items and you're going to crossfade these two items, the length of the whole figure is going to become shorter because of the crossfade. So we need to take that in account, that our buffer size is like 100, but if we have a crossfade of, let's say, 10, then the readhead should not be going from 0 to 100, it should be going from 0 to 90. Because when the readhead is at 7, for instance, it is crossfading with the thing
it's
at the end.
It's kind of like because you're moving the 100 thing like back to create the crossfade to begin with. Okay,
exactly.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So anywhere where we have modulo buffer size,
which is a couple places,
in the computation of the readhead position, well, it's just one place. Great. So in the line that reads readhead position, we are saying buffer index times speed at modulo buffer size. We should be saying modulo buffer size minus smoothness.
And do the same thing for the big sample L as well, right? Right here.
Yeah, that whole formula is wrong for various reasons, so we don't have to worry about that. But I do think that you need parentheses around buffer size minus smoothness.
Yeah, makes sense. Have I used smoothness lowercase s everywhere? I think so.
It doesn't matter. JSFX is case insensitive. Cool. And now that we have this, the readhead position will never be less than buffer size minus smoothness, right? Because we are saying modulo buffer size minus smoothness. So the next line where we have ampersand readhead position less than buffer size minus smoothness, that is redundant. We don't have to check for that.
Right. So
So you can no, don't remove the whole thing. Just remove the part after the ampersand, because that's the part that we have just determined will never occur. Or in other words, this is always the case.
So I also don't need the ampersand itself. Like I just start with this question mark, right? Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah, what you have there is perfect. So now with this fix, we can return to the point where we're below, where we are reasoning about buffer size equals 100, smoothness equals 10, and our readhead position is equal to 7. What is the number of the sample that we should be crossfading this with?
97, which is 96 because it starts from 0.
Well, but readhead position also started at 0, so yeah, it's 97.
Okay, 97. Yeah, makes sense.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so let's write a formula that will make this 97 come out. It's either 97 or 96, and it's going to be off by 1, but we'll deal with it. So what's the formula to get there?
What about buffer size modulo smoothness plus buffer size minus smoothness? Is that crazy talk?
Write it down.
So I'm saying, right, but whatever our buffer size is, we want buffer size modulo smoothness. So in this case, that gives us, if the readhead position is at 7, it gives us 7. If the readhead position...
Hang on. Buffer size is 100, smoothness is 10. What is the remainder of the
it's
division by
0.
100
Yeah, that's
and
dumb.
10?
It's got to be buffer size minus smoothness. That gives us 90. We want to get to 97. So buffer size minus smoothness plus readhead position.
Sounds good. Yeah, that's what I had in mind too.
And then I don't actually need any brackets, right? It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter because those
are equivalent.
Operations are associative. Yeah. Right. So give this a name. Say that variable x is equal to this whole formula.
Crossfade position. Zoinks.
Great. And now we will need to do the same thing that we do above, where we collect samples and we interpolate samples, but we'll need to do it twice. We'll need to do it for the readhead position, and we will need to do it for the crossfade position.
Mm-hmm.
Which actually makes me think, how about this whole block that is doing the interpolation action,
mm-hmm.
How about we move it up?
Okay.
So before the conditional, and then that means we are always doing this.
Right.
We are always outputting the readhead position. That's going to be correct when we are not crossfading, and it's going to be slightly incorrect when we are crossfading. So right now in the SPL0 and SPL1, we will have one of the samples. We'll have the sample on the left of the crossfade. If we are not crossfading, we are done. We stop the work. If we are crossfading, we need to visit the sample on the right and then do the crossfade. So I guess now we don't need 2 branches of this conditional. We just need to check if the readhead position is less than smoothness, we will do some extra work. Can you change the readhead position greater than to less than?
Yups.
Great. And then we need to fix whatever bugs we may have on the interpolation action, because we are about to copy and paste that code. So it makes more sense for us to fix it first, and then we'll copy and paste it below, because we'll do interpolation again on the sample on the right-hand side.
Sounds good.
So interpolation action. Okay, let's do it. We have our readhead position, which is going from 0 to buffer size. So it is the position in the window that we care about. Now the question is, where is this window? Well, the window is following the buffer index. As the buffer index is moving along, so is our window. So I guess what we want is, to say buffer index. So we are start there, minus buffer size, and that's where our window begins. So we can call this
window.
No, don't change buffer index. Don't change buffer index.
Wait, what am I?
So create a new variable that is like grain.
Okay.
Something like that.
Grain.
And this is the buffer index minus the buffer size. So that's the beginning of our window.
Why am I doing equal sign? Fuck, okay.
Because it's right next to the minus sign. But there is a problem, of course. The problem is that we may be in the beginning. So the buffer index may be right in the beginning. So if we say minus buffer size, we are going below.
Say again.
So suppose that our buffer index is right in the beginning of the whole block of memory. Then when we say buffer index, let's say the buffer index is 5. We are about to write to position 5. And then we have a buffer of 100 samples. So it's going to be 5 minus 100. So we are at minus 95. We shouldn't be. We should be wrapping back to the end, which in this case is 1,000 divided by 1,000 times sample ratio.
Right? I see.
Yeah, so on the next line, right after grain equals blah, 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 we have to check if we are below. So we'll check that if grain is less than grain 1L, because grain 1L is our beginning, then grain plus equals 1,000 divided by 1,000 times sample ratio, which we probably should at this point extract into a variable because this appears everywhere in the code base.
Okay, grain 1R, is that variable? When you think about it, but should I not use that because it confuses people?
What
grain 1R is essentially that because it's times 1, which is nothing.
Oh, yeah, let's not, because that's a base address and it happens to have this value because of the memory alignment. But if we were using some memory before this, then that wouldn't work out. So we probably want to have something like maximum buffer size or whatever.
Why don't I do this? Because this comes up whenever we need that thing. Straight jupes. And then I'll go zoinks. You should have used your library.
Yeah, this name is so bad because ms2sample has nothing to do with ms2sample, but
then let's call it. What did you propose?
Call maximum buffer size.
Max buffer size. I don't count max as a abbreviation because because reasons.
Sure.
All right. I think semicolon.
Okay, so now we are wrapping this variable around as we should. And then on the next line, we say small sample L at readhead position. That's incorrect. We are reading the readhead position not based on grain 1L, but based on grain. So change that grain 1L into grain.
Donezo.
And the same applies on the next line.
Donezo.
And there is one more thing, like you mentioned. We are saying modulo buffer size. We should be saying modulo buffer size minus smoothness, like we are on the formula above. And you wanted to fix this before, but I was kind of getting confused and I wasn't ready to fix that. Parenthesis.
Oh, yeah.
And then also on this line that is computing the division, that line also needs the minus smoothness situation, right?
Yeah, I think we need that all the time now.
Let me think about this.
Because we're saying the division, that's the division of the interpolation action. Like we're taking big boy and small boy, we're dividing them. Wait, are we doing that? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, so I think that that is a block of code that works. So now everything from interpolation action until the conditional, but not including the conditional, you want to copy and paste all of that and paste into the body of the conditional, because we are going to do the whole trick again for the cross-faded thing.
A question. Buffer size minus smoothness. We're still interpolating inside the crossfade, right?
Yeah.
So then, does this change anything about this line of code?
I don't think it
Okay,
does.
well, I guess we'll find out as well.
It's going to be amazing if this sounds anything that is not junk. I mean, we have been writing code for, what, almost 2 hours without running it. But yeah, so what we want to do there is to do almost exactly the same thing, except that we want to do it at the crossfade position. So how about we change the name of the variable crossfade position into readhead position, and then we don't have to change anything else.
Oh, okay, because it's conditional. Either readhead position is this, or otherwise it's that.
Yep.
Sounds good.
And then...
and then crossfading we do down here, I'm assuming, eh?
Yeah, we'll do the crossfade there, but there's still something else that we have to consider, which is the grain. Is it starting in the right location? Because if it is, we don't have to recompute it. Yeah, the grain starts in the same location, so you don't have to. You can remove the 2 lines that are computing the grain.
Right.
And then we have the buffer size. Hang on, that doesn't seem correct. Because the readhead position...
Because we did all of this to get the middle points.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That formula is correct, because we are adding readhead position at the end. And that is guaranteed not to wrap, because we have already checked that we are in the smoothness window. So that's okay. And then on the next line, we take the left, and then on the next line, we take the right. Is it right to do the modulo like we are doing? No, in that case, we don't want to do modulo buffer size minus smoothness, because our readhead is specifically after.
Yeah. So just modulo smoothness, no?
Yeah. No, it's just modulo buffer size.
Oh. Join.
Yeah, because we are specifically on the right-hand side of that crossfade.
Zoops. And same thing down
and
here.
And then, yep.
Zoinks. Zoops, boops.
And then the rest seems okay. So now we need to look at the lines that read SPL0 equals SPL1 equals blah, blah, blah. This blah, blah, blah is the sample on the right-hand side. And right now, what we are doing is just we are overwriting. We don't want to just overwrite. We want to
variable and all that.
We want to crossfade, right? So we need to find where in the crossfade we are. And this is at the point where we decide what shape the crossfade will have. I think that doing it linearly will probably be good enough. So we can start with that, which is the simplest thing. So let's say that the beginning of the crossfade is 0 and the end of the crossfade is 1. So a ramp going from 0 to 1. We need to find where in this ramp we are. Do you know how to do that?
Modulo, no?
How do you do that? Write it down.
Okay. Now you're asking the hard questions. Okay, we're between 0 and 1. We want to know where. Oh, wait. Can we do this? Is it similar to the weight thing that we did?
I think it will be similar,
Yeah.
yes.
So I can call this ramp position. These names are not great, but bear with me. So ramp position is between where we are. So readhead position minus 1 minus readhead position. Or readhead position minus floor of readhead position? I'm confused, man.
Well, let me think about this for a moment. So before, think about the first line in this block of code. Think about the first line in this block of code. Before we do that, the first line, we are going to change the readhead position. So before that line, before we change it, we know that the readhead position is less than smoothness. So the readhead position is between 0 and smoothness. Smoothness is a value like 10. And readhead position is a value like 7. And what we want is to have that be a number between 0 and 1. So we can
Divide
just
by
say
smoothness. Okay.
Exactly. So do ramp position equals readhead position divided by smoothness. Except that this line must be
at the top.
The first line in the block.
Zoinks. Boinks. Oops. Where is it, baby girl? Okay. Cool.
And now the thing that says SPL0 equals SPL1 equals a bunch of things, we will change that line now. You may want to extract this whole thing on the right into a variable because the formula is going to start being a bit too crazy. So extract that into a variable that is like...
And it needs to be up here, right?
No. On the line right above. Right before. We just want to have a name for this because the formula is going to be long.
Long formula equals this action.
Sure. And then you can remove all of that from there. And then we already have the sample on the left, which is currently SPL0, right? We have assigned SPL0 above. So SPL0 is already the sample on the left of the crossfade. So what we want to do is the sample on the left of the crossfade times ramp position plus long formula times 1 minus ramp position. And that's going to do the blending.
Oh shit, you gotta tell me again.
Yeah. So we already have the sample on the left of the crossfade. That is SPL0. So you can say SPL0 times ramp position. No. You have the cursor in the right location. Go back there.
Here?
Right there. Say SPL0, which is the sample on the left, times ramp position, which is going to be like 0.7 because we are 0.7 of the way there. Plus long formula. Long formula is the name that you gave to the sample on the right. The sample on the right needs to be at 0.3, right? It's about to end. It's fading out. It's about to end. So we say 1 minus ramp position. That is going to be 0.3.
So 1 minus ramp position times long formula?
Exactly, yeah.
And then this needs to be in the brackets. And over here, nothing needs to be in the brackets,
So now you can save this and we can run it and it will work.
All right.
But mute the master just in case.
And where was our thing? This is the thing. Looks like, looks kosher to me. So let's hear it. Let me make it 100% wet.
And can you make it longer? Because it's looping so fast that it...
How's about we go to the origin? Sorry. When I went to 100%
yeah, we are not producing any
width, we weren't. But if we do the... Oh yeah, we're doing no sound.
Yeah, we are just getting the dry. So, well, first thing to look at is the edit window will show us the variables on the right. If we have any typos, any weird names, any variables that are only referred to once, that will be a good telltale sign that something is
Long
odd.
formula is 0. That sounds wrong.
That sounds wrong,
Yeah.
doesn't it? Yeah.
What can be 0 here? I guess big sample L could be 0 here. We know that weight isn't. And we see that big sample L is 0. So big sample L, what up? And grain 1
I
L
wonder
is
if
0.
we are looking...
So what up?
Grain 1's L being 0 is right, because we are saying that the buffer begins at position 0. We should be interested in the buffer. The buffer index is all right. It's wrapping. The buffer size seems to be okay. Even division is okay. And
I think, and this happens to be where we did the double modulo operation, because Readhead position has the modulo in there, and then we did it again. So could that be something where, like, logically maybe it makes sense, but syntactically it throws something off of something?
the Readhead position seems to be changing in a way that makes sense. Seems to be going up to the buffer size and coming back.
Yeah, and even small sample L, or sample L is also 0. So these two things aren't like indexing.
Let's look at grain. Grain is also moving in a way that makes sense. Grain should be also going to the right and then wrapping back, and it seems to be. And buffer index is moving all right. So I'm double checking that we are writing the samples in the right way. Seems like we are.
Okay, one thing is, where is this max buffer size? Did we write that? Oh yeah, we did write it somewhere. Okay, never mind. It's right here.
Yeah, it's 1600.
Yeah, my
right?
sample rate is 16,000. What the fuck? No. It's getting the S rate. Is S rate one of those things where it's not available in the init block?
But if it wasn't, then we would be multiplying by 0. It would still not explain this number.
Yeah, 16.
Max buffer size is 1600.
16,000, but that's the low.
Oh, yeah. 16,000. Can you do like a full compile reset, maybe take the effect out of the check and put it there again? Because I don't know, it looks too weird to me.
Yeah, so I'll save this and I'll go, I gotta remember what I called it, which is pitch dash shifting, and it's not even showing up because, we did,
you have horizontal scroll on the effects window, scroll to the left.
Oh, alright, so remove, add again, edit, it's 16,000. Could my, because you know how sample rate is like request sample rate, and you know how I'm using my webcam audio right now.
Well, scroll down on that window and we'll be able to look at S rate.
Oh, I see. Rates is 16,000.
Ah.
So it could be that literally because I'm not using my regular interface, we're requesting 48,000, but we're actually, this is how you check that. Yoinks. But what the hell is 16,000 sample rate? I mean, even a piece of crap would be. Oh, there you go. Yes, it's 16,000.
And you don't even have the option to do anything reasonable.
And the high end just opened up a little bit because that's literally 16,000. You can hear that. You can hear the Nyquist. Okay. Did I
What?
did
the
I
heck?
break anything on the stream? Is it oh, Bo, to answer your question in the meantime, no, I've not been doing anything mixed stream wise just because my system has been not being able to handle it, and when I have a lot of plugins it just doesn't happen. So I'm trying to figure out a way to show my progress because both of those tracks are actually done. Yes, but sad, very sad. OBS really pissed on my parade, I'll tell you that.
Sorry to hear that. We'll figure
Okay,
it
so
out.
now S rate is 24,000, which is still,
Okay, that makes
yeah,
sense.
I guess whatever, we can't be 48K. That's really weird. Why can't it be, why is it so low? You know what I mean? If we go to this guy, 32 is the max. Yeah, what are you gonna do? I'll have it interface it. This number will go back to a logical amount.
It's the first time I see something like that. Okay, so that explains the variable being the weird number, but it does not explain the
long formula being 0.
readings we are getting for what was it? We are getting 0 for small
Big
sample
L, and as a result, long formula.
Yeah. You know what? I wonder if this is happening on the crossfade or if it's happening every time. So the line that reads big sample L, can you go to that line, that one above? Yeah, the first one. And in the beginning of the line, you can say something like debug equals, and then big sample L equals blah, 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 just the rest of the line. And then we're going to be looking at that one in particular, not the crossfading one. And debug is always 0, 2. Well, we're not running any audio through this right now, are we?
Oh, we can check that. I was also thinking to put it here because, well, no, I guess that wouldn't matter. Let's run some audio through it. I'll mute the master and I'll just loop this.
Yeah, mute the master and loop some section.
And get the hell out of here. Yeah, no, it's 0.
Okay, why could that be?
Why?
Grain is a reasonable number. And grain 1L is a reasonable number. And buffer index is a reasonable number. So we are writing to that location. Let's have a debug, another debug variable like debug2, which is just grain 1L as 0, which means you're just checking if we are putting something there.
Okay, so debug2, debug2 equals grain 1L, did you say, at 0?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and you gotta do a thing. We're not writing.
It doesn't seem to be writing.
So we changed buffer index everywhere.
Oh, I think I know what it is. We are writing SPL0 there. because of the thing I mentioned in the beginning,
Yeah.
how it's silly that we are writing something on top. Yeah, what we should be doing in the beginning is have something like sample equals SPL0, and then in the end we say equals sample.
Okay.
So we store the current sample before we trash
Okay.
it, because we are going to output something. Alternatively, we could also, instead of saying, oh yeah, I guess this is even better. Wherever we are saying SPL0 equals SPL1, blah, 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 you can say like output equals that.
Output equals SPL0 equals SPL1.
No, remove the SPL0, SPL1 situation. Yeah, remove all of that. And where it reads as sample 0 in the same line, change that to output.
Oopsie daisy, output,
And then, of course, the first line on the sample block, which is sample equals SPL0, you can remove that one. And where it reads as sample 0 equals sample 1 equals blah, 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 on right before the conditional there, you can also change that to output. Okay, I think we did something. Now save this and let's see if the numbers change.
Yeah, we got action.
Okay, we got action. The levels are okay, so do you want to hear that?
Can't wait. Zoinks. But we're still not getting any. Well, let me do that whole thing. Zoinks and joinks. No, we still got no sound. Stream, you are hearing this, right?
Oh, do we have a line that reads SPL0 equals SPL1 equals
no,
output?
we do not.
We have a line
we
that
haven't
reads
defined
like
that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, so right now the effect is bypassed. No, that line has to be below. That's the line that is crucial. We don't want to overwrite SPL0 and 1 before we store it in the buffer.
Here.
That's the whole reason why we have an output variable now. There you go. Excited to mute the master and look at this.
Okay, mute that master.
Because now we are not bypassing the effect anymore. We'll be reproducing sound.
Prepare your asses for sound, everybody. Here we go. Yeah. Ooh. It has a tapey turntable. What's interesting to me is that with smoothness at 275, you can still hear it, right? Ooh, and it's very nice sounding, but you hear the wap 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 wap, right?
Yeah, because the transition is too long. No. Oh, because the buffer size is too long, I think.
I still hear it. I still hear where the sample ends. Oh, it sounds awesome though. It's a whole new monster. Oh, and do you hear those click-a-maroons?
I hear clicks, yes.
Hey, it's tape, man. It's tape noise, man. No, I don't know.
We modeled this after
a tape, yeah.
a piece of gear that everyone aspires to have. It costs thousands of dollars. We bought like 5 units because they are all aging, and we modeled this freaking noise.
Using the trademark.
That's what we did.
Using the trademark analog spirit TM.
Oh man, the hardest part about this is that JSFX, they are text files, so people can call the bullshit on this.
Yeah.
Because if this was a C++, we would compile this, sell for $100, and no one would complain. Okay, so we have something. We probably have off-by-one mistakes in there and other weird, crazy things happening, but it's pitch shifting all right. And we got rid of some of the clicks. We probably got some new clicks, however.
Yeah, like I think we don't get that clicking. I should have versioned this so we could have compared. But before we were just getting a click where it was getting to the end, and it was very periodic, and it's still somewhat periodic, but you can tell that like the crossfade is actually happening as much as it's like somewhat obvious where it is. Especially if I make this big, it goes. So I'm like, just the way I'm hearing it, and call me on my bullshit if you. I feel like instead of crossfading, it's more like this, you know, end begin, end begin, end begin, end begin. Yeah.
It may be. The formula that we are using for that is the one that you came up with, and I think it's correct.
Yeah, but where in our code are we reading two samples and interpolate, or not interpolation, sorry, that's the wrong word, and crossfading between them?
Go back to the code and...
It's this boy? Okay.
Yes. And nothing stands out to me as obviously wrong.
You know what does seem interesting to me? Is output itself, okay, equals long formula, I think. Yes. So output equals long formula. So here we're going output equals output times ramp position plus 1 minus ramp position times output. Does that do anything?
Well, the output on the cursor that you have there is computing the left-hand side of the crossfade, and then we do a whole bunch of things, and then at the end we are saying output equals output, which is the left-hand side of the crossfade, times the ramp position plus 1 minus the long formula, which is the right-hand side of the crossfade. So all of that seems okay. The ramp position seems okay. Readhead position is readhead position plus the buffer size to get the right-hand side minus smoothness. That seems all right as well. And then we go to the grain. The grain has not changed.
I propose a way to test this. If I make a if I make a 1K sine tone that's 1 second long, and we run it through this and print the output, if the crossfade is a crossfade, it should be a continuous sine tone. If the crossfade isn't a crossfade, we can go to the end of like each loop and see that it's ramping out and then ramping back up.
Okay, yeah, sounds like a plan.
Let's test this bad boy. All I need is, well, this should be really minutes and seconds anyway. And I want a 1 second long thingamajig. Come on, fella. Don't embarrass me in front of my friends. Okay, whatever. It's 1.3 seconds. I think that's fine. And I'll do one of these. Why? Why is sometimes my hotkeys like I need to reset them again? I don't know why. And on this I want You have a noise generator of sorts. Oops. And make this 1,000. Doesn't really need to be 1,000, I suppose. And glue this and remove the fades and loop this. Wait, oh, yours does have a ramp, does it? Or it doesn't? It doesn't start right away for some reason, but whatever. Let's make it be all that. And then blah 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 blah.
Why are you looping? Couldn't you just drop the pitch shifter on that item and glue?
But it needs to go more than one revolution of that sound for us to see, no?
No, just make the item bigger.
Oh,
make it like 6 seconds of a tone, and probably, yeah, I think that maybe smaller values would be better because we are running at a low sample rate, and the more points we have, the smoother the curve will be. So make it in like 100 hertz or something like 220 should be fine.
Okay, I have to leave soon, but let's run this test and then we can call it or something. I'm gonna just put it on another track and record the output of this track in mono, whatever. And we're gonna joinks it out over there. We're gonna zips it up over here. We're gonna do a little bit of this. We're gonna do a little bit of that. We're gonna kill the time selection. Did we actually pitch shift? Yeah, I mean, that didn't sound like 220. So it did a thing like this, and then later it stabilized. We can see it go down in value. Maybe if I make this big.
It stabilized for longer than the window, didn't it?
Did it?
It seems like it, yeah. This seems longer than the window size.
Let's make the window size 1,000, and let's make the smooth.
No, make it small, make it small. Make the buffer size 100. And then print this.
The clicks are rhythmic, but they're not dependent on... It's almost like warping it at the edges, you see?
But that's not the click. That's not a click.
No, the click happens else. Whoa.
Oh, the click happened. It's not clicking there.
Oops, sorry. Oh, and now it's running through itself. Yeah, it happens right here. You see? Joinks.
That's a click.
And it's like somewhere. So the reason I said, I guess I should have made it a round number, because I wanted to see if we can find like somewhere in the cycle it's messing up. Because 220 doesn't wrap. But that's actually, yeah. But yeah, we're clicking. But the click doesn't have anything to do with the window size or the buffer size, because it's like the click happened like 4 times in this whole thing, but the ramping obviously like every 100 milliseconds. So this amount is...
Yeah, so probably we are doing the grain the right way, and our issue is when we get to the end of the actual buffer, which only happens every second, regardless of our grain size.
Sick.
We see the whole buffer.
Yeah, so that did help. Cool.
Yeah, that was a good experiment. So probably it's an off by 1 mistake.
Yeah.
Probably.
Those test tones are really loud. Somewhere. Oh, sorry, Bo. Shit. Sorry, I'll turn this down a bit right away in case we test early, like again.
No, but let's not do that. Okay, so can you like send me the code or post the code on GitHub
Sure.
or whatever, and then I'll take a look at it during the week. It's probably enough by one mistake, and we'll find it,
We'll
and
punch you in
then
the face.
we can wrap it up. And I guess I see you on Wednesday for some more vocals, and you released a video about how to do game writing. So I guess I'm just going to do it, and then we can see if we like it, and then we can maybe try doing backing vocals.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. What was it? That place? It was Github or something where you would put the things.
It's gis.github.com.
Gis.github.com. And then you just go. You do what?
Oh, you're not signed in.
Sign in.
Yeah, you can do this later. You can just maybe send me via email, or yeah, you can do that too if you want.
And I go plus.
Probably.
Create a new gist. The thing from episode 17, I think the number is. Okay, cool. Create. Is it a secret gist? Public gist, man. If you wanna be part of this. And then this link I'll put in the chat and I'll send to you, right?
Great, thanks.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for the ones of you. Wow, English doing great. Thanks to all the folks who watched and stuff, because I know it was like sometimes iffy and the audio is probably really iffy. So thank you for being part of this action. We will return with a good interface next week and do other stuff that are code related, or maybe not, or maybe yes. You never know. That's part of the charm. And any last words, Leandro?
Yeah, I will not be streaming tomorrow, so I see you on Wednesday over at my channel.
Yes, come over to Leandro's channel where we do not. You would think we would do even nerdier stuff there, but no, we are not. So,
well, it's hard to be nerdier than this. But I was just curious, and I wanted to check this out. Do you see that?
What am I looking at?
Did my scene change, or do you still see my face?
No, I still see your face.
Oh, okay. So, of course, OBS is doing its thing. Now you should be seeing
1,000, baby!
Yeah, I just got to 1,000.
I'm waiting to get to 4,441 to do my special, but also I haven't shot it yet. But yeah, I was just gonna complain about stuff.
Yeah, it will be a lot of fun. It will be the 1,000 subscribers party on Wednesday.
Oh, fun, cool. Are we doing something interesting?
We are recording backing vocals, I think.
Maybe I'll get one of those things where you blow on them and they go.
I know what you're talking about. I don't know the name for that, but yeah. I do know the name of the spirograph now. Let's get out of here, Arya.
Adios, everybody. Thanks for the memories. We need a frequency shifter. Done. Yeah. We'll shift those frequencies for you. Don't even worry about it. Yep. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
And we're out. I had an end screen, but I don't know where it went. End stream. I said. Okay.